A helicopter descended from the clouds, its powerful rotors stirring up dust and leaves across Westbrook Academy's manicured sports field. Parents' Day presentations halted mid-sentence as all eyes turned skyward. The sleek black aircraft touched down with precision, its door emblazoned with a subtle gold logo that sent whispers racing through the crowd of elite parents. "Isn't that? It can't be. Johnson Technologies." Christy Coco, the kindergarten teacher they'd all dismissed as just another working-class single mother, stood frozen as the helicopter door swung open. Her heart pounded against her ribs. After 18 months of separation, after enduring countless humiliations with quiet dignity, after hiding who she truly was, the moment of truth had arrived. A tall figure emerged from the helicopter, impeccably dressed yet somehow radiating an unpretentious warmth that defied his obvious wealth. Larry Johnson, tech genius, humanitarian billionaire, and the man everyone in that field had underestimated, scanned the crowd until his eyes locked with Christie's. Without hesitation, he strode across the field, ignoring the gasps and murmurs. He embraced Christie tenderly before scooping up their son Miles, who squealed with delight. "Sorry I'm late to Parents' Day," Larry announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. "My wife has been holding down the fort quite admirably without me, hasn't she?" Deborah Mayo's champagne glass slipped from her manicured fingers, shattering against the ground. Henry Floyd looked like he'd been struck by lightning. And Christie, simple, ridiculed Christie, smiled for what felt like the first time in 18 months. But how did we get here? What led to this extraordinary moment of vindication? Let's rewind 3 months earlier. "Miles, honey, we're going to be late," Christie called out, straightening her modest cardigan in the bathroom mirror. She'd been up until 2 a.m. finishing a couture piece for a boutique that paid her under the table, but no one at Westbrook Academy would ever know that. To them, she was just Ms. Coco, the kindergarten teacher who somehow managed to secure a position at their prestigious institution despite clearly not belonging to their tax bracket. Miles bounded out of their tiny apartment's only bedroom, backpack nearly as large as his small frame. At 7, he had his father's analytical mind and her creative spirit, a combination that both delighted and terrified her. Mom, Tommy's dad, is taking their whole family to Paris for spring break. On their own plane. His eyes were wide with wonder. "Do you think Dad could take us somewhere on a plane someday?" Christie's heart twisted. Another question about Larry. They were becoming more frequent. "Your dad is doing important work, helping people who need medicine in places far away," she answered, the practiced response feeling hollow even to her own ears. She knelt to his level. "And you know what? Some of the most amazing adventures happen close to home." She didn't add that their agreement had been her idea. When Larry's humanitarian AI healthcare company exploded from promising startup to global phenomenon, she'd witnessed firsthand how wealth changed people, how it changed how people treated them. When his latest project required extensive time overseas, she'd suggested the arrangement. She would live on her teacher's salary alone, maintaining a normal life for Miles while Larry focused on deploying life-saving technology to underserved communities. Secret marriage. A distant husband. A life of contradictions. The morning subway ride to Westbrook Academy was crowded as usual. Christie clutched Miles's hand, navigating the packed car with practiced ease. They emerged from the station into the privileged air of the Upper East Side, walking the final 6 blocks to the imposing stone building that housed Westbrook Academy. Students arrived in chauffeur-driven luxury cars and sleek private SUVs, while Christie and Miles approached on foot. "Good morning, Miss Coco," came a syrupy voice as they approached the grand entrance. Deborah Mayo, immaculately highlighted blonde hair falling in perfect waves, designer handbag casually displayed in the crook of her arm. As PTA president and wife to a hedge fund manager, she considered herself the unofficial queen of Westbrook. "Good morning, Mrs. Mayo," Christie responded with a polite smile. "Miles, go on to the classroom. I'll be there in a minute." As her son disappeared through the doors, Deborah's smile tightened. "The Spring Charity Gala Committee is meeting this afternoon. I assume you won't be joining us." The minimum donation is rather substantial this year. Her eyes flicked dismissively over Christie's sensible shoes and department store clothes. Actually, I'll be there, Christie replied. I believe supporting the school's scholarship fund is important. Deborah's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched in surprise. How admirable! Though I sometimes wonder if the teachers should focus on teaching rather than trying to participate in parent events, especially those who might find the financial commitments challenging. Before Christie could respond, a deep voice interrupted. Morning, ladies. Henry Floyd approached, his custom suit and authoritative presence announcing his position as board chairman before he even opened his mouth. His son, Tommy, Miles's occasional playmate, trailed behind him, absorbed in a handheld gaming device that cost more than Christie's monthly rent. Ms. Coco, Henry nodded, his gaze lingering a moment longer than necessary. There was something unnerving about how he looked at her. Assessing, curious, yet publicly distant. As a recently divorced father, rumors of his interest in various Westbrook mothers circulated constantly, but Christie had never expected to be among them. Mr. Floyd, she acknowledged. Tommy had excellent participation in yesterday's science activity. Did he? Henry glanced down at his son with surprise, as though just remembering he was there. Good to hear. Though I'm more concerned about his mathematics progress. Perhaps we could discuss that sometime. Over coffee, maybe. Deborah's eyes narrowed at the suggestion. Parent-teacher conferences are next month, Christie replied smoothly. I'm happy to discuss all aspects of Tommy's progress then. Henry smiled, something calculating behind his eyes. Of course. Until then. As they walked away, Christie overheard Deborah's stage whisper. Really, Henry? The kindergarten teacher. I thought you had better taste. Christie's cheeks burned, but she kept her head high as she walked to her classroom. This was the world of Westbrook, where her worth was measured by her bank account, where she was simultaneously dismissed and objectified, where no one would ever suspect that the humble Ms. Coco was actually married to one of the most innovative minds in medical technology. Sometimes she wondered if keeping their marriage private had evolved from a principled choice into a form of cowardice. But then she remembered the look in Larry's eyes when he spoke about his work, bringing diagnostic tools to regions without doctors, saving lives with algorithms that detected diseases before symptoms appeared. How could she ask him to choose between that mission and them? Her phone vibrated with a text. Expecting a message from the school administration, she was startled to see Larry's name. After weeks of silence, 3 more regions launched today. 27,000 new patients access diagnostic tools. Thinking of you and Miles. Love you both. No mention of when he'd be home. No questions about their lives. Just a mission update and a sentiment that felt increasingly distant. She slipped the phone back into her pocket without responding. The Westbrook Academy Spring Charity Gala was the social event of the season, where the elite parents competed to demonstrate their generosity through extravagant donations, and more importantly to be seen doing so. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glittered with designer gowns, rare vintage champagne, and jewelry that could fund several developing nations. Christie stood before her bathroom mirror, studying her reflection. The dress she wore, a midnight blue creation with subtle beading that caught the light like distant stars, was her own design. She'd worked on it late at night for weeks, channeling her frustration and loneliness into every stitch. No one would guess it wasn't a designer piece, though they'd certainly question how she could afford one on a teacher's salary. You look like a princess, Mom, Miles said from the doorway, eyes wide. He was staying with Mrs. Abernathy, their elderly neighbor who doted on him. Christie knelt to hug him. And you're my prince. I won't be too late, okay? There's mac and cheese in the fridge for your midnight snack with Mrs. Abernathy. Can I stay up until you get back? Please. His eyes, so like Larry's, pleaded with her. Not tonight, sweetheart. But tomorrow's Saturday. pancakes and cartoons in pajamas all morning. His disappointed nod twisted her heart. Another night, another compromise. Sometimes it felt like her entire life was built on compromises. The gala was in full swing when Christy arrived. She moved through the crowd, accepting a glass of champagne while mentally calculating how many hours of sewing it represented. Teachers were expected to attend but not truly participate. Background figures to remind the wealthy donors where their money was theoretically going. Ms. Coco. What a surprise. Deborah's voice carried a note of artificial delight. She approached with a cluster of women, all dripping in diamonds and designer labels. That dress is interesting. Where did you find something like that? The question contained the assumption that Christy couldn't possibly afford anything in the room. Before she could answer, Henry appeared at her elbow. It's quite striking, he said, his eyes taking in the elegant lines of the gown. You have excellent taste, Ms. Coco. Thank you, Mr. Floyd, Christy replied, uncomfortable with his attention but grateful for the momentary shield from Deborah's barbs. It's very creative, Deborah persisted, her smile sharp as a blade. Almost like something handmade, isn't it, ladies? There's a certain charm to DIY fashion. The women tittered politely. Christy felt heat rising in her cheeks but maintained her composure. I believe craftsmanship should be valued regardless of its source, Mrs. Mayo. Oh, absolutely. Deborah's smile didn't reach her eyes. We can't all afford Valentino or Dior. Some of us must make do. Speaking of which, she raised her glass too quickly, and red wine splashed across the front of Christy's carefully crafted dress. A collective gasp rose from the surrounding crowd. Oh my goodness! Deborah exclaimed with transparently false concern. How clumsy of me! Here, let me help. She dabbed ineffectually at the spreading stain with a cocktail napkin, managing only to push the wine deeper into the fabric. Christy stood frozen, watching months of late-night work ruined in an instant. But more painful than the ruined dress was Henry's reaction. Though he'd witnessed everything, he simply stepped back, unwilling to challenge Deborah's position in the social hierarchy. It's fine, Christy finally managed, stepping away from Deborah's assistance. If you'll excuse me. In the lavish bathroom, Christy fought back tears as she attempted to salvage her dress. A stall door opened and a woman emerged. Carmen Diaz, one of the few scholarship parents who had been invited as a token of the school's commitment to diversity. That was deliberate, Carmen said quietly, handing Christy additional paper towels. Everyone saw it. It doesn't matter, Christy replied, though they both knew it did. You know what I don't understand. Carmen continued. You never fight back. There's something about you. You carry yourself like someone who doesn't need their approval. Like you know something they don't. Christy met her eyes in the mirror. Maybe I just know their approval isn't worth compromising myself for. But later that night, as she scrubbed the wine stain in her tiny kitchen sink while Miles slept, she wondered how much more she could endure for the sake of their agreement. She hadn't spoken to Larry in 3 weeks. The dress, like her heart, seemed permanently stained. The call came during morning circle time. Christy was leading her kindergartners in a counting song when the classroom phone rang. Miles had been absent that morning. A fever that hadn't broken despite medication. She'd reluctantly left him with Mrs. Abernathy while she taught, unable to afford taking a sick day. Ms. Coco, your emergency contact is on line 1. It's about your son. The world tilted sideways. 20 minutes later, she burst through the doors of Mount Sinai Hospital, heart pounding. Miles had been admitted with pneumonia and dangerously high fever. Mrs. Abernathy had called 911 when he became disoriented. Hours blurred together in the pediatric wing. Miles's condition stabilized but remained serious. Christy hadn't left his side in 36 hours when she finally reached for her phone and did what she'd promised herself she wouldn't do. She called Larry. He answered on the first ring despite the time difference. Christy, what's wrong? The sound of his voice, so familiar yet so distant, broke something inside her. It's Miles. He's in the hospital. Pneumonia. The doctors say he'll recover, but... Her voice cracked. He's been asking for you. There was a moment of silence then. I'm booking a flight now. Text me the hospital details. No, she said quickly. No, that's not why I called. We had an agreement. Your work is meaningless if I lose my family, Larry interrupted. I'm coming home. But he didn't. Instead, specialists appeared at Miles's bedside the next morning. Treatment protocols changed. Private room materialized. Hospital administrators visited personally. Larry was pulling strings from afar, taking care of them without breaking their agreement about maintaining their separate lives. It was during the third night of Miles's hospitalization, when Christy had fallen asleep in the uncomfortable chair beside his bed, that she awoke to find Henry Floyd standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. The Westbrook Academy end-of-year auction was the final major fundraiser before summer break. Parents donated luxury experiences, vacation homes, and exclusive opportunities to raise money for the coming school year. Christy, in a moment of either courage or madness, donated an original fashion design, labeled only as custom couture creation by anonymous designer. The bidding war that erupted over her sketch shocked everyone. When the final bid settled at $20,000, breaking all previous records for the event, Deborah Mayo's face contorted with suspicion. Anonymous? She questioned loudly as Christy tried to blend into the background. I think we deserve to know who this mystery designer is, don't you? Unless, of course, there's something questionable about the submission. Christy's heart raced. Coming forward meant exposing her dual identity, but remaining silent seemed cowardly. Before she could decide, Deborah continued, I find it highly suspect that such a valuable item appears without provenance. For all we know, this could be stolen intellectual property. That's a serious accusation, Deborah, Christy finally spoke up. Deborah's eyes gleamed with triumph at drawing her out. Is it? Then perhaps you can explain why a kindergarten teacher is suddenly involved with high-fashion designs worth thousands. All eyes turned to Christy. The moment stretched, taut with tension. Henry Floyd stepped forward, and for a heartbeat, Christy thought he might defend her. Instead, he said, Deborah raises a valid concern about authentication. Perhaps we should table this item until we can verify its legitimacy. The betrayal stung more than she expected. After their hospital connection, she'd thought. But no. Of course he would align with his social equal. The design is original, Christy stated firmly. And it's mine. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Yours. Deborah's laugh was cutting. Next you'll tell us you're secretly Coco Chanel. Please, Ms. Coco, we all know teachers don't moonlight as couture designers. The humiliation was complete when the auction committee decided to review her donation, effectively questioning her integrity before the entire Westbrook community. That night, Christy drafted her resignation letter. Some principles were worth more than security. Her letter included a brief mention of her background in fashion design, a small reclamation of her identity as she prepared to leave Westbrook behind. What she didn't know was that this tiny detail would set unexpected events in motion. Henry Floyd, troubled by his role in her public humiliation and genuinely curious about the woman who consistently defied his understanding, began researching her past. What he discovered left him stunned. Archived fashion magazine features on prodigy designer Christina Coco, whose promising career had mysteriously ended just as it was taking off. Awards from design schools. And most shocking of all, photos of Christina Coco with tech innovator Larry Johnson at charity events years ago. Meanwhile, across the world, Larry Johnson was finalizing his return to New York. Miles's illness had been the wake-up call he needed. The distance he'd maintained, originally meant to protect his family's privacy and normalcy, had evolved into emotional absence. His conversations with Christy had grown stilted, formal. Something was fracturing in their relationship, and no technological breakthrough was worth losing the foundation of his life. As Parents' Day approached, Christy's final day at Westbrook before her resignation took effect, Tensions reached a breaking point. Henry had attempted to speak with her privately, but she'd avoided him, unwilling to endure further humiliation. Deborah, sensing Christie's vulnerability, planned one final social execution to cement her departure from their elite circle. The morning of Parents' Day dawned bright and clear. Christie dressed carefully in a simple but elegant outfit of her own design. No more hiding, not today. Miles sensed her determination. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked as they walked to school. "I'm perfect," she answered truthfully. "Because I have you." The presentations began in the outdoor amphitheater, each class performing songs or recitations for the assembled parents. Christie's kindergartners were scheduled last, a fact she suspected was Deborah's doing, ensuring many parents would leave before their performance. As the children sang their sweet, slightly off-key song about friendship, Deborah approached the microphone, cutting them off mid-verse. "Before we conclude, I'd like to make a special announcement," she said, voice dripping with false warmth. "As many of you know, Ms. Coco will be leaving Westbrook Academy after today. While we normally celebrate our educators' contributions, in this case, certain irregularities have been brought to the board's attention." Christie felt the blood drain from her face. Deborah was going to publicly accuse her of fraud over the auction donation. "It seems Ms. Coco has been less than forthcoming about her background and qualifications," Deborah continued. "And while Westbrook values diversity of experience, we cannot condone." The distinctive whir of helicopter blades drowned out her next words. Heads turned skyward as a sleek black helicopter descended toward the sports field adjacent to the amphitheater. Emblazoned on its side was a logo recognized worldwide: Johnson Technologies. Conversations halted. Even Deborah stood speechless at the microphone. The helicopter landed with precision, and when its door opened, the man who emerged sent shockwaves through the crowd. Larry Johnson, whose technological innovations had revolutionized healthcare delivery in developing nations, whose fortune rivaled those of many Westbrook parents combined, whose rare public appearances made international news, scanned the crowd until his eyes found Christie. His smile, that same smile that had captivated her years ago, broke across his face as he strode purposefully across the field. Without hesitation, he embraced her, then knelt to scoop up Miles, who squealed with joy at the father he hadn't seen in person for 18 months. "Sorry I'm late to Parents' Day," Larry announced, his voice carrying across the stunned gathering. "My wife has been holding down the fort quite admirably without me, hasn't she?" The silence that followed was absolute. Deborah Mayo's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the ground. Henry Floyd's expression cycled through shock, understanding, and something that might have been respect. "Yes, my wife," Larry continued, his arm around Christie's waist. "For those who haven't had the pleasure of truly knowing her, this is Christina Johnson, brilliant fashion designer who put her career on hold to raise our son and teach your children while I've been deploying medical technology overseas." Whispers erupted throughout the crowd. Parents who had dismissed or pitied Christie now stared in disbelief. "When we agreed to this arrangement, I thought we were protecting our privacy and Miles's normal childhood." Larry addressed Christie directly now, his voice softening. "But I was wrong to ask you to diminish yourself, to hide who you truly are. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what that cost you." Tears welled in Christie's eyes, but she stood tall beside him. This moment of vindication wasn't just about proving her worth to Westbrook's elite. It was about reclaiming her full identity after years of compartmentalizing herself. "Mr. Johnson," Henry Floyd stepped forward, extending his hand. "Westbrook Academy has greatly benefited from your wife's contributions. I hope we can count on your family's continued involvement with our community." Larry's grip was firm as he shook Henry's hand. "Actually, I've been considering a significant donation to establish a fashion design program for underprivileged students. But I'll need assurances about leadership changes and inclusion initiatives before committing." Henry's eyes flickered to Deborah, who stood frozen in humiliation. "I believe the board would be very receptive to such discussions." As the crowd began to disperse, buzzing with the day's dramatic revelations, Christy felt a tap on her shoulder. Carmen Diaz stood there, a knowing smile on her face. "I always knew there was something more to you," she said. "The way you carried yourself, like someone who knew her own worth regardless of what others thought." Christy smiled. "I'm still figuring out my worth, actually. But I'm getting closer." Later that evening, in Christy's tiny apartment, soon to be exchanged for a home that would balance Larry's wealth with her value for simplicity, they talked honestly for the first time in months. Miles had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from excitement and emotional overload. "I thought I was protecting you both," Larry said, his fingers intertwined with hers on the worn sofa. "Instead, I was absent when you needed me most. And I thought I was proving something by handling everything alone," Christy admitted. "Instead, I was building walls between us." "Where do we go from here?" he asked, the brilliant innovator suddenly uncertain in matters of the heart. Christy considered the question. "Forward together. No more separate lives. No more secrets. Just us, figuring it out day by day." Larry nodded, pulling her close. "I can work with that." 3 months later, Christy launched the Westbrook Academy Fashion Initiative for underprivileged students, combining her teaching skills with her design talent. Henry Floyd, now focused on reforming the school's culture following Deborah's resignation from the PTA, became an unexpected ally in creating genuine inclusion programs. And on evenings when the light was just right, neighbors might glimpse the Johnson family on their terrace. Not a billionaire tech genius and his fashion designer wife, not the subjects of society gossip or business news profiles. Just a family finding their way back to each other, one day at a time. Because true worth isn't measured in bank accounts or social standing. It's found in authenticity, in standing firm in your values even when ridiculed, and in the courage to be fully seen. Flaws, strengths and all. Have you ever had to hide an important part of yourself to protect someone you love? Would you have revealed your true identity sooner than Christy did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Jenny Soul Stories for more powerful journeys of love and redemption that will touch your heart and soul.